I'm back for another video. My name is Josh Kasich, and today, I'm going to be going over the order in which you should watch the movies, the chronological order of the films. Now, technically, you could go by release order, especially in the beginning, mostly, but I feel like it's better to more or less watch them correctly for timeline reasons. Captain America came out before Avengers, right? Now, most of the movie takes place basically in the 1940s, when World War II started. But the beginning and end of it actually takes place before Avengers, and and that's technically the reason why they did that is because it was going to be the way it was released, so they had to have that as more of the stuff that took place in the 1940s is more of a kind of flashback / origin, you could say. But I feel like you don't necessarily have to do it that way. You can watch Captain America first, as it's supposed to be. It technically takes place mostly before. So if you do want to do it that way, I suggest skipping the beginning and end of the Captain America. Basically, the beginning and end is when it's like modern time, okay? And you can tell that this is modern time, especially the ending. When you skip to the point where it kind of goes back, okay? That for the beginning of the movie, you just skip. You can tell when the 1940s stuff begins. You can tell that, so start watching it then. Then watch most of the movie, and then stop when it stops being the war stuff, which you can tell, including the post-credits, the credit scenes or whatever in the ending. Technically you could also skip that too, is because most of that is more of a kind of a teaser trailer type thing for the first Avengers, and some of the scenes and some parts in it are really just scenes that took place in the movie. So more or less you can just technically skip the credit scenes, but obviously watch that. Then what you're going to do is you're going to watch Captain Marvel. Now, yes, Captain Marvel is one of the most recent movies released, but the time it actually takes place in the 1990s, okay? But obviously you're going to skip the mid-credits scene, because that takes place before Endgame. So, Avengers Endgame, so that's why you need to skip that, because you're not watching that now, because at this point, they're nowhere near Endgame. Then watch the post-credits scene, because that actually takes place right after the movie, so definitely watch that. Next up is Iron Man. And then you're going to watch Iron Man 2. Skip the credit scene. That one is... The reason why we're skipping that is because that is a teaser for Thor. And the reason why I say it's a teaser, because the scene doesn't actually take place before Thor. It's actually a scene within the movie Thor. So you don't necessarily need to watch it whatsoever, to be honest with you. But... now, the reason why I say watch Iron Man 2 after Iron Man, because, Iron Man 2 takes place 6 months after the first Iron Man, and before that you had the Incredible Hulk release, which that movie technically starts before Iron Man 2, but they all take place, Thor, Iron Man 2, and the Incredible Hulk, more or less take place, in the same week. And they say Incredible Hulk should be watched before Iron Man 2 based on release order. And because of time stuff-wise, it makes sense you should watch it before Iron Man 2, except for one thing. the ending of Incredible Hulk does not make any sense unless you watch Iron Man 2. And there's no exact way to stop Incredible Hulk and just watch Iron Man 2. So I would say just watch Iron Man 2 to understand the ending of Incredible Hulk. I mean, they all take place relatively the same time under the same week, so I don't think it necessarily matters. So, yeah, definitely watch Iron Man 2. Then I would watch Incredible Hulk. Then I would watch Thor. That's how I would do it. Obviously, Iron Man also talks about kind of the Thor a little bit, like in the movie. There's something that a character says that has to do with Thor, and that's why you definitely should watch Thor after Iron Man 2. But that's, like I said, there's another thing in Iron Man 2 that explains the ending of Incredible Hulk, and so that's why I would watch it. And since Incredible Hulk technically starts before Iron Man 2, that's why I would watch that before Thor. So that's how I would do it, just for understanding wise, for that purpose. Next, after watching Incredible Hulk, you watch Thor, and then after Thor, you watch the Captain America parts you skip, which is the beginning and end, and then you watch the first Avengers. Sorry about that. For the Faded Black, something I had to cut. Now, back to where was I? Right. After Avengers, you're going to watch Iron Man 3. So that is the last of the Iron Man movies. Now, this is me, but there are these things called the Marvel one-shots, okay? Now, they're released on certain Blu-rays. The Blu-rays of the Avengers, the Blu-ray of Iron Man 3, the Blu-ray of Iron Man 2, I think. Or no, not the Blu-ray of Iron Man 2. The Blu-ray of the first Avenger, Captain America: The First Avenger, the Blu-ray of Thor, the Blu-ray of Avengers, the Blu-ray of Iron Man 3, and then the Blu-ray of Thor: The Dark World. Now, these Marvel one-shots, they're little brief scenes that, or short films, or whatever you want to call it, that kind of add details to the MCU. But they're not necessarily important to watch, except for one. I think is definitely important to watch, is the Marvel one-shot called All Hail the King, which is supposed to fix the problem with Iron Man 3, or at least the complaint that everyone had with Iron Man 3. And it's definitely necessary to watch, I feel, for the movie, one of the Marvel movies that are eventually going to come out, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I think All Hail the King is necessary before watching Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And there's a possibility that the plot of All Hail the King, some of the characters in that will appear in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I think. I mean, there's no guarantee that's true, but to me, it's very important that I think it's very important if you watch All Hail the King. So if you're going to buy the movies, buy the Blu-ray version of Thor: The Dark World. I didn't because it was cheaper to buy the 3-movie pack for Thor. Basically, it has Thor: The Dark World, and Thor: Ragnarok. I was able to see it. I watched it on the internet. It is on the internet. If you want to find a way to watch it. But I think it is definitely important that you watch it. Now, it is on the Thor: The Dark World Blu-ray, but you need to watch it right after Iron Man 3. So, before watching Thor: The Dark World. Next, speaking of Thor: The Dark World, you're going to watch Thor: The Dark World. And then after that, you watch Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Now, the ending basically not the end. I can't remember if it's the mid or the post credit scene. One of those scenes basically kind of, well, one of those scenes basically are essentially kind of leads up to the first Avengers. And you could, if you really want to, watch that scene before Avengers. Now, technically, Avengers Age of Ultron would be next, except for one reason. The Guardians of the Galaxy movies, Volume 1 and Volume 2, both take place in 2014, which is what the year these movies I'm mentioning are in. And they take place before Avengers. Well, we don't actually know what exactly when in 2014 they take place. There's no exact date for them. They're just some random time in 2014. So most people think it's best to watch it after Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I think it's a good idea, but you could say, oh, the scene in the post-credit scene of Captain America: Winter Soldier is supposed to set up the Avengers. If you understand that, then it's okay if you watch it right after the Winter Soldier. I mean, you could say, since this is the world, the movie Avengers Age of Ultron is just taking details from any of the movies that took place before it. And so therefore, it doesn't matter exactly when those details took place in the timeline. It's just grabbing it from it. And so basically, you could just watch Guardians of the Galaxy right after the scene. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. There's no exact way. You could watch the Guardians of the Galaxy volumes 1 and 2 and then watch that scene. That's up to you. It doesn't really matter. But now, so that, like I said, it doesn't really matter. And so let's kind of move on. Next, you would watch Avengers Age of Ultron. But if I were you, I would skip. Oh, forgot one thing. For Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, skip the credit scene in which there's Team Groot. Now, there's actually, Volume 2 actually has a lot of scenes at the end of it. And one of them is Teenage Groot, but it doesn't actually make sense to watch it then. Mostly because there's years between Volume 2. Now, Groot, as we could tell, between Volume 1 and Volume 2, Volume 2 is supposed to take place right after Volume 1. As you can see, Groot, based on that idea, if we watch Groot, if we watch that scene, it doesn't really make sense because that means Groot is going really fast. I think it's best if you watch that scene later on in the timeline, so that, and which I think it does take place more or less more longer in the timeline, so that the age of Groot aging up just makes more sense. Now, I don't want to. That's the most spoils I'm going to go into this video. Hopefully, I really don't want to spoil anything in this video because, more or less, not only is this for fans of Marvel, so you have if people can understand how these movies take place, but it's for also those people who haven't watched Marvel movies before and decide, you know what, I want to watch these movies, but I don't know the exact order. And I don't want to spoil these movies for those people, Like, I want them to understand how these movies take place, and then they can, watch them like that. So I'm trying to do my best in this video not to say as many spoilers, but, the Teenage Groot is, you don't even know what Groot is, and I don't think it's much of a spoiler, but it is some details. And, it's the only way I could really describe the scene. There's, no better way to describe the scene, so you could skip it for now. So that's the best I could do for that. So, yeah, skip it. Then watch Avengers Age of Ultron. And then skip the mid-credit scene. The mid-credit scene is Sorry, I had to sorry to fade to black again, but I messed up. I said something I probably shouldn't have. It's kind of a spoiler, and I wanted to cut it out. So that's kind of. But they skip the mid-credit scene. Now the reason why we're skipping it is because it makes more sense later in the timeline, but it's also really hard to do that because the scene, basically what a person said, it feels more, you would understand it better watching it right after this movie, but time-wise, it really doesn't make sense there because of the story of Infinity War, and so it's really hard to exactly say this scene. It's really hard to watch the scene because of that and where it takes place. Altogether, I don't think it's really all that important. I think it feels more like a teaser than anything else, and so I would if I do have it later in the timeline, but you could technically just skip it. That's how I feel. If you just don't want to, for your mind, or like thinking wise, you're not confused or anything, I think it's probably best if you just skip it, but that's just me. Next, after Avengers Age of Ultron is Ant-Man, and then after Ant-Man, you're going to skip the post. Because the reason why we're skipping it is because it's an actual scene within the next movie we're going to watch, and so you don't really need to watch it. It was more of a teaser, and since it's a scene, you're going to watch it anyway, so there's no point in watching it twice, especially before the movie. So I stand corrected. It's not going to be the next movie you're going to watch, it's going to be the movie after that, and here's the reason. What you're going to watch next is Doctor Strange. Now, the reason why we're going to watch Doctor Strange first, yes, I know it doesn't come out to way after these next few movies. We're watching it now because of when it starts. It starts off in February of 2016. And basically, where we know that in Captain America Civil War, which would be the movie I was talking about, we know that it has to take place after that time, because at the end, there's a time or a date that was given that said April something of 2016, and so obviously it makes more sense if you start with Doctor Strange. Now, Doctor Strange expands over a year. And so that's kind of why it expands the year of its release date. But there's no way to exactly cut it. It just expands like that way. Like, it's just story-wise, it just expands. And so because of that, it's better if we start here, watch the entire movie, and if you understand that it expands over a year, okay, then you would understand that the next movies we're going to watch take place during this movie, and then it'll be fine. It'll just be fine if you just think that way, and yeah. Next up is Captain America, the Civil War. And so definitely that's the next thing we're going to be watching, as I stated. And let's see what else is there. The post-credit scene doesn't really make sense, because of how it's supposed to. It's supposed to set up the Spider-Man movie, I guess, but it really doesn't make sense based on how the Spider-Man movie started. Like, the events don't really it doesn't really line up, and so I think you could just consider it a teaser than anything else, so I wouldn't watch that, because it probably confused people, so just don't watch it, just skip it. And then, let's see, Okay, so next up, so next movie we're gonna watch is, well, you're not gonna really watch it because, well, we'll get to it. We're gonna technically watch Spider-Man, but not really. So the beginning is supposed to set up the movie and actually takes place right after the Avengers, but it's more of a setup thing, not like a kind of a flashback, as you will. And because of that reason, you need to watch. You can't just watch that right after Avengers. You have to watch it with this movie, obviously. But we're not going to watch the entire movie this round, so actually do not watch. I think it's best to not watch the beginning just yet, because now, yes, it takes place. It takes place before the scenes that you're gonna watch right now from this movie, or you're gonna watch at that point. But like I said, it's better to watch it because it sets up the movie. So that's why I would say skip the end, skip the beginning. Basically, the next part is I'm sorry, I really don't want to go into too much spoilers, so I'm trying to find the best way to write this. Time-wise, it's going to say 8 years later, which is a mistake. It is not 8 years later from 2012, which is when Avengers take place. This takes place in 2016, so it's actually 4 years later. So that was a film error, or a continuity error, but right after it says 8 years later, you're going to skip to 8 years later. You're going to watch what's after the 8 years later, and then you're going to stop when the screen says 2 months later. Okay, so you're just going to watch that between the 8 years and the 2 months. You're just going to watch the what happens in the movie between those two things. Then, after watching that, you're going to watch Black Panther, because Black Panther takes place a week after Captain America: Civil War, as actually stated in the movie. Don't listen to the official Marvel timeline. That literally makes no sense. They messed up with that. Yeah, watch that right after watching that brief Spider-Man scene, and then after that, watching Black Panther. Then you'll watch the rest of Spider-Man and all the parts we skip. Okay. All right. After that, you're going to watch the Avengers Avengers Age of Ultron mid-credit. This is the scene I kind of told you to skip, but this is the right place to watch it, because the next movie then you're going to watch the Guardians of the Galaxy credit scene, which the one that I told you to skip. Then you're going to watch Thor Ragnarok. And now, I would say the reason why we're watching those two mid-credit scenes before this, because Thor Ragnarok, literally the ending leads right into Avengers Infinity War. It really does not make sense to watch Thor, then watch those two scenes, and then watch Avengers Infinity War. Especially timeline reasons, I feel like that's the Avengers Age of Ultron scene is the Avengers Age of Ultron scene kind of takes place in timeline reasons before Thor, I think. Really, it's really hard to pinpoint, so but I think it's best if you just watch these two scenes before Thor Ragnarok, because literally Thor Ragnarok, the ending literally leads right into Infinity War, as Rogue One literally leads into the New Hope. It's like literally that close. Not going to lie. So now it's kind of weird for me because I always wanted to watch after Ant-Man and the Wasp was released after Infinity War. I always want to basically watch most of the movie the entire movie except for one of the credit scenes before Infinity War, mostly because Ant-Man and the Wasp takes place the same time as Avengers Infinity War. It might have started a little bit earlier. I always wanted to watch that before Infinity War in this timeline, which I did do. But after watching the movies and trying to do a bunch of research, I think it's best to watch it after Infinity War and watch Thor, then watch Thor Ragnarok, and then watch Infinity War, just how close they really are to each other. And that's just my opinion. I think it's just best way to do it. It's still up to you. If you want to watch Ant-Man and the Wasp first, that's up to you. But I think it's just the best way to do it. Next up is, like I said, Avengers Infinity War. So you're going to watch Avengers Infinity War. And then you're going to watch Ant-Man and the Wasp. So now you have to understand that Ant-Man and the Wasp more or less takes place the same time as Infinity War. Like, pretty much, like, the same time. And there's a possibility that it started before Infinity War, but there's no exact time. There's, like, no time that actually states that. We only know that it takes place during Infinity War because of the ending. Now, technically, Infinity War is still longer than Ant-Man and the Wasp. So there's like still basically after you watch the credit scene, there's still more of Infinity War, technically, but there's no exact way to pause and stop or anything like that of any sort. So yeah, you're definitely going to watch that. Now there's another problem, because technically Avengers Infinity War and Endgame are meant to kind of watch back to back, almost, based on how Endgame starts, almost. But I think it's just best if you do it this way. There's always either way you're not going to get what you want. So, it's either you watch Thor to Infinity War, or you watch Infinity War to Endgame. It's really... but even then, you actually have to watch the mid-credit scene of Captain Marvel before you watch Endgame anyway, because that's when Captain Marvel comes in for Endgame, like the scene. So, that scene alone basically is that's how they set it up. So that's why you need to watch the Captain Marvel mid-credit scene before you watch Endgame. Then you watch Endgame, and then you watch Spider-Man Far From Home. That is the complete way of watching these movies if you want a better understanding of all the films, details, and everything. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like. If you're new, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified for my next upload. My YouTube channel website link, as well as my Twitter, is down in the description as always. And thank you. Goodbye.